Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Steve. Today I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Doing well. Come join us, folks. Come get lost for a bit as we talk about labyrinths and mazes. I believe you came up with you threw this idea out there. What was your inspiration?
Yeah, so this past Thursday, was our typical Kids on Bikes game over on Mini Terrain Domain, which is on Twitch, or you can kind of follow us off to YouTube. It usually gets posted handful of days later. But some of us wound up getting trapped in this governmental complex, and like even the title of the episode was inspired by the movie Labyrinth. So the way Jake wound up running that adventure or that session, it was like I'd never seen Labyrinths done that way. That was really interesting, where we would roll dice, or he would roll dice, or a combination to determine like what was going on. It wasn't oh, here is just a pre-made dungeon that we're exploring. So like there was literally, if the dice didn't go your way, you might never get out. It was like that's evil. So I figured, this would be a fun topic to kind of talk about and get into, like, you know, now that I've seen that side of it, what kind of tweaks and twists would I do if I were gonna do a
So,
dungeon that way?
so he did it, completely random,
Yes.
and you consider it a dungeon, a labyrinth, or a maze?
It was definitely a labyrinth. It wasn't a like the typical maze where, like, like we have the Maze of Mandoon over on the website. Um, but like it's not a maze where it's like, all right, you just have lots of different twists and turns and you got to find your way out and map it through. This was literally like a place where we had hallways with doors, but the inside space of this building did not fit the outside in any way, shape, or form, because there's weird shenanigans in the works.
It was a labyrinth. It was a TARDIS essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I didn't actually realize there's a difference between a labyrinth and a maze.
sure.
They're used interchangeably apparently, and they are different.
I can see the slight variations. Some would say like a maze is a type of labyrinth, but the usual labyrinth is not always a maze. I don't know.
So when I looked it up, a labyrinth actually there's only one way to go, and it leads to a specific place. Generally the center,
Okay.
right? Where a maze is a puzzle that you have to figure out that can have dead ends and doesn't go anywhere, but you're trying to find your way through. So they're kind of very different. They look similar, but they function very differently. Um, and I feel like mostly in D&D, you're going to encounter mazes, not labyrinths. And
Right.
even the movie Labyrinth, they used a maze. They didn't use. I don't think they actually used the labyrinth, right? Because all the ways didn't really lead to the center of the city. It wasn't one path, and you could get lost, and
Right.
you could run. You did have dead ends.
That is true. But as you said, you were trying to get to the center, which is what you're trying to do for a labyrinth, where the maze is you're trying to get out. You're trapped. So I guess in that case, we were more in the ways of a maze, but there were different labyrinthine aspects to it.
Yeah,
Because it was a lot of corridors with doors, but every door that you'd open could lead to who knows where. And spoilers, but like, there was a spot where like we thought we got out, and we're walking through the center of town, and then we realize, oh, we didn't actually get out, and that we're you know basically our mind is being messed with, and instead of sitting in a pizzeria and enjoying real food, I'm sitting there eating cardboard. And then the
nice.
walls begin to like kind of fall apart around us, and we find ourselves back in the complex, and it's like, well, holy crap, this really sucks.
So is it like supernatural stuff in that game? Is it pseudoscience?
Oh no, it's absolutely supernatural nonsense. It's inspired by, uh, Stranger Things and Goonies and all those other like 80s kids movies that weird things happen. Uh, and things over the last like two episodes have seriously been tweaked hard on the what the fuck zone.
Yeah.
With the one player developing some kind of alter ego mirror identity, and well, my character becoming a werewolf or starting the transformation to become a werewolf. So it's a bit wonky, but we've got a talking uh powered rat that we've rescued that like it can mess around with things that are powered by electricity. Uh, I don't we don't know the full limits of what it can do. So far it's been more like a set piece than like, oh, here's something that we have full control over. It's there, and when it's necessary, it's like, hey, can you do anything to help us here? Uh, so it's been a lot of fun exploring, the weirdness of this place, and Jake has said that the the NPCs that we've talked to have talked about like the ley lines in this area are really weird, and that's what's causing all of the nonsense that we've gotten ourselves up to.
So yeah, you made me think of something though. It kind of like, when you mentioned Goonies and Stranger Things. It's funny how like um Stranger Things kind of gets lumped in with like those 80s style movies. But a lot, but a lot of those 80s style movies were like they're more about like kids going on adventure, but there wasn't actually like Goonies. There's nothing really supernatural in it or
Correct.
sciencey or anything like that. They run into some criminals. Stand by Me is kind of like another one where they like find a body, but again, there's nothing like crazy going on with that kind of stuff. It's not until you get to like maybe like ET where you start getting into like weird stuff.
Right, but you can have a mixture of both of those, in a kids on bikes game, and you never know like whether you're gonna get into some serious wacko stuff or whether you're gonna get into, more normal like people antics. And so far it's been a nice mismatch of the two, not and not just like, oh yeah, we're adventurers that we can slaughter everything that's in our path and just keep on going. It's been a nice change of pace.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can slaughter everything in your path now that you're a werewolf.
I'm more afraid of that because like once it was revealed, it's like, all right, well, for now, this is what you're gonna do mechanically. But like I know full well how werewolves work, and this is
Yeah.
not gonna be something where like I'm gonna be in 100% control all the time. So like I'm terrified of what I might do to my friends when the moon is full and I fail a check or I do the wrong thing. So it's a bit tough.
The most important thing is if we find out whether or not Wolfmen have nards or not.
Well, that comment has been thrown out not only in the chat but in the game.
So Zargon wants to know what's the worst thing ever experienced or put into a maze,
You've done the Maze of Mandoon a variety of times, so why don't you go first?
and a couple of times. I don't know if there was anything worse. Like, I did have like in some ways like I had I had like too much player buy-in in the one session where they like speed ran the Maze of Mandoon. Like if it was a timed event, that group absolutely won it. They were
Oh
like
wow.
we are not getting trapped in here because that's part of it is like you have a time limit to get out and they
Right.
really bought into that hard. So like they wouldn't fight nothing. They were just running from everything. Up until like the final encounter where you have to kind of fight your way out. So like that, I wouldn't say it was a bad experience, but it was definitely like this 3 to 4 hour adventure took two, and that's a fast adventure for D&D. So,
Sure, sure.
and then the other experience that I don't know if you would say it was bad or not, but the one player in the final encounter triggered a trap, and I was like, "You take this amount of damage," and he's like, "I'm down." I'm like, or I'm dead. I'm like, "Oh, you're down?" He's like, "No, I'm just flat out dead." That was my hit points in negatives.
Wow.
That was the first time I killed a fan, Ludwig.
Oh, load.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So,
Well,
so those are
he's a great guy, so I'm certain he took it well.
yeah, and you know what? Like, it happened at the end of the adventure, so I feel like it's not as big of a deal. It's not like it would suck if like the opening encounter, you kind of like you whiff then, and then you're like, okay, now what do I do? Do you either hurry up and come up with another character, do you sit there, do you leave, whatever. But I personally, for me, if I make it through like the whole adventure and then die at the very end, it wouldn't bother
Right, yeah. You played the whole session to
me.
die
Yeah.
at the end. Like, all right, we went out with a hero's death, and it's all good. You played the whole thing. If you die like right off the bat, that can be a little scary or a little disheartening. I know my first game of D&D in a castle. This isn't a maze, but it's dropping a fan. But Jeremy was one of the players in my game. First encounter, he's playing, a level one wizard or level two wizard, whatever we started off at. And first encounter, first roll of initiative, like monsters go before his character and drop him. So like he doesn't take part in the whole first encounter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh geez, this sucks. But the rest of the session and the rest of the game, went off well, so much so that Jeremy came back for my second round. So I know there was no hard feelings there. Um,
Or that
yeah,
or he's coming back for revenge.
oh well, it could have been. I'm sitting here, trying to think. Like, I don't think I've really done a whole lot of things that fall into mazes or labyrinths that have stood out where there's been anything like as a negative experience or a worst thing. Um, it's not really a labyrinth, but like I feel the puzzle layer of my beholder. Um, in the Narcitus game, I felt like that wasn't a maze; it was a cool place. I felt that was a fun thing, but that doesn't really fit here. But it's the only thing that's jumping into my head.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I ran you guys through Maze of Mandoon at some point or another. I don't remember which group.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've played it. I couldn't tell you, um, whether it was like just a one shot, whether you ran us in
Oh, it
that
was
with.
it was no, it was the group with Relian.
Was it Reliant was in that one?
I think so because he wanted to go back and free the guy in the tree.
Oh, oh yeah, okay.
And then somebody take like a sapling or something. I don't know if it was
Man,
you
that
or
was
the
so long
goblins,
ago.
but yeah.
We haven't played that game in like 4 years, so it's going back a ways, if not longer than that. Uh,
Yeah, so yeah, I can't think like I don't think I've actually been through many labyrinths or mazes in my experiences either. I know I've run them, right?
hmm,
Because Maze of Mandoon definitely isn't the first one that I ran. Um, there was another one I did for you guys with the like it was like a champion of Morganis, which was like one of our deities of
oh,
savagery, and you guys got some kind of boon because you like succeeded or whatever. I don't remember if that was I don't know if that was the tell group or not. but that
I think
seems
it
like
was.
the right time period. So like I guess like of like our group, like I'm the one that's most likely to run a maze type
Hmm.
adventure. And even then, like that's back when we used to run a lot more straight up like dungeon crawls and more
Hmm.
traditional style D&D, where our games aren't really as aren't quite as aren't we don't quite run them that way anymore. Although I did kind of design Maze of Mandoon to be like a hybrid of how we
Hmm.
used to run games and kind of how we run them now, where it's kind of like a Morpheus in the sense that it's not a full laid out labyrinth or dungeon, but encounter areas, and like the GM's giving guidance on how to run the players through them and what to do, and why why it's not mapped out. It's just there's actually a reason for it, because the maze and the labyrinth actually changes, um, so that recording it is actually impossible, because you can go back the way you came, but it's going to be different than it was before. And and I just use that as a plot device, because at this stage in the game, I just don't want to draw out huge dungeons anymore.
And there's something to be said about that. The concept of like, yes, there's lots of places that I can go and click a few buttons, and here's now a mega dungeon or a super dungeon or a
Right.
labyrinth or whatever it is that
Right.
you're looking for. But I as a DM don't have a strong desire to run multiple sessions through this area, nor do I as a player want to just sit there and be like, yay, this is going to be all combat for the next x number of sessions. And to those people who love that, sure, there's no problem, no judgment here. That's just not what excites me at the table anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to play those games sometimes, though. I feel like when we kind of like play the Vast Grim games, when Brian's running them, or like when he's run more
Sure.
port from us, it's definitely much more of that kind of game. Um,
I would still say it's a hybrid. It's not just let's go fight stuff, kill the monsters, and keep going. There's definitely more involved, and I feel like when you get into like these mega dungeons or these big dungeons, or a multi session labyrinth, that like that's that's the meat and potatoes of it. It's not there's not the social aspects that I enjoy, and there's very little. Oh well, let's get into some exposition and lore of this place.
well, yeah, and I guess like I kind of went forward with Maze of Mandoon with that as well, because like there is at least a social encounter in there
Hmm.
with someone to interact with, right? And also it's they're also in there for foreshadowing as well, as like, oh, you don't want to end up like this guy who's been stuck in here forever, because this is going to be your fate. But it just then also it gives players something to role play with as well. So I feel like you can still encounter those. I mean, even look at like if you look at the Labyrinth movie, right, which very much is going through this labyrinth, this maze, this dungeon, and even the puzzles, right? Some of the puzzles were role playing encounters as much as they were puzzles, right? Like the two doors.
Hmm.
Um, so like I feel like you can take stuff like that with you when you're creating your own mazes, labyrinths, dungeons, and make sure it isn't always just one encounter after another, just combat. How can you do cool exploration? How can you incorporate role playing into these different scenarios in a way that feels right, especially like you're in some place it's the middle of nowheres in theory, but also you still have this social encounter where your players get to RP with NPCs or NPC like creatures, because
So
yeah,
to get socials, you can find people that are trapped in there. You can have interactions with as you brought up, like the doors, inanimate objects, things that are, sorry, objects that are animate, not inanimate. So that there can be plenty of things that can be dropped in.
Well, you
Uh,
can have conversations and interactions with inanimate objects, but the rest of the group might look at you a little
sure, and they generally tend to be a little bit one-sided. Uh, but there's nothing to stop you from turning and having a conversation with that wall.
weird.
Now, you know, from an exposition standpoint, you could literally have like the puzzle that is needed to get you out require learning more about the maze and the person who created it. So like you've got a puzzle, so all the layers of puzzle and whatnot that you want to put in there, but you've got to get the exposition, you've got to get the stuff in order to have the pieces of the puzzle to solve the riddle. I think that could be fun. I feel like my brain is certainly jiving on how I want to make a good maze for not an upcoming game because I don't have any of those, but for a game that I run at some point in time.
Well, and also just because the designants of the maze are designed to be hostile against the player's characters doesn't mean you can't have social interactions with them, right?
That's true.
Especially depending on the nature of the designants of the maze, right? Are they prisoners? Are they captives? Are they stuck here? They might like be bored and tired of killing everyone that comes through their encounter area, right? And they might want to talk first. They may eventually get around to the killing of the player characters, but in the meantime, they're like, "Hey, I haven't had anyone to talk to in 100 years. What's going on? You got a newspaper or something I can read? What's happening?"
So, like looking at that, uh, what if those that die in the maze, you know, get trapped in the maze, and they then like work there as opposed to going to whatever afterlife. You're now essentially a defender here until you're wiped out, but you're under like a compulsion that you can't fight, that you can't just give up, you can't injure yourself. um, I think that could be an interesting take on you know how to add the role-playing aspect. And like while yes, the minotaur is usually like the typical guy, like I could just see this person of like, oh, we just sit and have this conversation, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I hate to have to do this, but I'm afraid I'm gonna have to kill you now. And they pull out their weapon and proceed to like, go ahead, roll initiative.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely an avenue you could go. You kind of you jarred my brain a little bit when you mentioned that. Made me think of maybe a hall. In my mind, for whatever reason, it's glass, and behind the glass is all the souls that have been defeated in the maze. Um, and this particular hall is has a magical fear effect because of all the undead there, right? But if you can overcome it, then you can actually interact with the spirits and learn like how they died, what maybe about other things in the maze, lore about the maze that maybe they didn't have, like because you were saying about needing to accumulate knowledge and lore in order to kind of solve the riddles within, and that would also be like a fun way of giving it to it, and also giving it to your players, and also you could like describe how gruesome these spirits all look because maybe they look like they did, in their last moments. So if they were, mangled by some monster, that's how they look. So maybe it could be a little bit of a gross out effect, a little disconcerting, but make it
Sure.
kind of like an obstacle. But if they overcome the obstacle, part of the reward is they get to interact with the spirits, and the other part is they might actually gain useful information.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun directions. And like the more I talk, like the more things is like, all right, I want to ignore and just start, start putting all these notes and ideas that are fresh in my head. But I can wait. I got 35-ish, minutes till I can start entering the notes.
Zargon says, like a ghostly Walmart greeters, which I do find that a bit appealing as well. Also, like for the haunted hall, like you know, the other thing that makes me kind of think about is like maybe they get a set amount of time that if they like brave it, then the spirits will cooperate them for a bit. But after that certain amount of time, maybe being in the presence of the living kind of affects them, and maybe they do start coming out of the walls because I saw someone left the comment. Zargon, they emerge from the walls. You know, they're they're pretty cordial and um, cooperative at first, but the next thing you know, they're coming through the walls and trying to get you. Like kind of going back to what you said, even like, oh, this has been great, but now I have to kill you, unfortunately. So you can kind of like really string it out for a while, and as they're getting ready to leave, and be like, oh, I guess this is all we can get out of this, and they're like, no, wait, there's more. You get to join us, stay. Or maybe the spirits are fine for as long as the players are talking to them and interacting with them. But as soon as they
Mhm.
try and leave, they're like, "No, you can't leave. You must stay with us forever." They're like
Yeah, I
they're
mean, it's
like a
just,
really needy significant other that's clingy and just won't let go.
but I mean, like you can take that and like expand upon it of like having the spirit of the thing that's interacting could be like following them around and like whether you have some little magical orb that falls around that's like a two-way scry kind of thing. So like the maze controller is watching, or you could have like these spirits that you're talking about. Uh, maybe they're waiting for like a specific criteria. So like you might think that, oh well, these guys are just kind of friendly, and then like, oh, you know criteria unlocked or criteria met, now I gotta kill you. uh, so like you could have these kind of weird triggers, if you will, of what's going to actually make the go from conversation to an actual combat.
And the trick too is like coming up with interesting things throughout your maze, your labyrinth like that. Yeah, I feel like you need some riddles and puzzles as well, but I've always struggled with those because it's like you you can't have it so like it becomes this obstacle that this is the only way to go forward
Hmm.
because I mean I've seen that movie way too many times where the players are just like they're stumped, they're getting frustrated, it's no longer fun for them. You as the GM, you thought you came up with something that was going to be a good time and fun, and all you're doing is really you're just creating frustration for the players. Matter of fact, that's why a lot of times I don't come up with solutions or answers to the questions. So a lot of times I just ask the questions or put the problem in front of the players and just wait for them to produce something that seems like a good solution, and just
A
going with
good
that.
good way forward.
Yeah.
So I look at those things as like, okay, that's a puzzle, and I agree with you there. So I'm very particular on wording. So like a riddle is a riddle. It's a you got a phrase, you got a question, and there is a singular answer, or in a couple of cases, like there might be a couple of things that meet that criteria. And I love riddles, and I've heard a lot of them. I'm not super great at them, but like I do. I anytime I stumble across something, I'm like, oh, here's some good riddles. I'm gonna write these down, or I'm gonna copy these down into my DM notes to be able to you know come to later. And I've found a couple new ones recently that I have to go through and essentially vet. But I feel like riddles, when you get, to them, that they're more a like player puzzle than it is a character puzzle. And, like, oh, well, what if you've got those players that just aren't good at riddles? Like, they just don't see things the way, the riddle writer did. And then you're stuck because it's like, all right, well, how do you figure out, like, what gets you a clue? What gets you to where you need to go? And, it's tough because I've seen riddles where I'm like, I've got no idea. I've tried breaking it down and nothing fits. And I'm like, oh, I just need to go look up this answer. This sucks. So like I try not to find those ones, but I also don't want to give the, you know, oh well, here's the one straight out of Lord of the Rings that everybody is, heard time and time again, or not Lord of the Rings, but Hobbit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, or this, or
you
the
know,
Sphinx's riddle, or something like
yeah,
something that's fairly common in nerdy circles, right? But
right,
the other problem becomes too is like if you then like you resort to like maybe the rolling dice to give them hints, and then it's like it becomes it's not very satisfying for anybody at that
for anybody,
point. So I think
uh,
part of that is always like knowing your players and knowing what they're into, and knowing if you have players that like that. And like early D&D was a lot of that stuff where everything was designed to test the player, not the character. And like a lot of the OSR games are a lot like that as well. You've got a limited amount of abilities, so your character sheet isn't going to give you the solution necessarily. So you start looking at other things. It's like, well, what's on my equipment? I got a rope, a stick of gum, and and some fungus. What can I do with that? And this ten
all
foot
right, so
pole.
we've passed our halfway point, so I will throw out there that you know, uh, this is powered by Easy Roller Dice, as we can, kind of look up here in the corner. Whether you want to go check out their awesome new dice set that's recently come out with their dragon scales. Super awesome. I've got a picture I took yesterday that's going to get scheduled for this week. I know I said it was going to be last week, but things happened. But you should definitely go check out all the awesome new dice that Easy Rollers got come out with. And you can use, if you've never ordered from them before, the promo code that's down in the description below. Get yourself a sweet discount because Easy Roller Dice, whether it's your first set of dice or your 1 million set of dice, Easy Roller Dice for all your dice rolling needs.
Yeah, the dragon scales look fantastic. They sent us over some sets and they look really good. Mine has been absconded with again.
I think so much as absconded as you just say here.
Well, she likes them, and if I give her things that she likes, it makes my life better and easier. And I also have lots and lots of dice, so
Indeed.
I especially have lots and lots of easy roller dice.
That's true.
Uh,
Uh, now if you happen to be a fan of Nerdarchy and did not happen to get in on the Mage Forge, we are now taking orders for whether you want the PDF or the deck or both over on the website. So pre-orders over, the Kickstarter's been delivered. So if you missed out but still want to get in on it, you can get it while they're still available.
yep. We don't know if we'll be doing any more runs of it, but we do have quite a few copies still. So over on the website, you can purchase the tarot size deck of cards. There's 250 magic items in there, and it looks super sweet. We've been using them in our own games for a long time now, and now we're actually using the cards in our own games.
Indeed.
So, since we've been talking about mazes and labyrinths, does it make you want to now run something with a maze or a labyrinth?
Uh,
And have you given a thought to like how to make it work with our more contemporary style of running games and what
so
a
that
traditional
that's
maze is?
that's the engine that I've got going. Um, it would definitely be designed in a situation like the Maze of Mandoon, where like you've got the shifting walls and you've got things that are immobile, so that you wouldn't have the whole thing set up and you got to like work your way through. That it would definitely be um, the encounter areas, and while it might be possible to run through in a single session, if the players make poor choices or bad dice rolls, like I would want to do it similar to where Jake did, where like you roll dice and based off of what kind of what results, whether it's the players or the DM that's rolling the dice, it's determined of like whether you're making progress or you're going the wrong way, and that just determines how many more encounters you have. Uh, but I would want to mix in. Oh well, we've definitely got you know social aspects, and we definitely have lore things to figure out. You definitely could have puzzles and combat and what have you in order to be able to like do all of the aspects of a session that I enjoy, at the same time. So it's not just, oh, let's do a slog of combat here.
What do you think should be the main thrust of that style of venture?
So I would feel like it's a complication, like the concept of whether you've stumbled into it, whether you like have to go into it, like the players are in it, and until you get through it, that's it. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, teleport my way out, or any of that extra dimensional magic is just not gonna work. You've gotta live the maze, you've got to get through the maze to be there. But solving the complication is more important than can I just randomly guess my way through.
Um, so how did Jake do the randomness aspect? Like, did was it just charts? Were you guys rolling? Was he doing the rolling?
We were rolling dice, and we were pretty sure that anything, like, we were rolling percentile dice, and we're pretty sure like anything over a 50 was like, oh, here's a hazard, here's a problem that you guys have to deal with. And if you happen to roll like under a 40, that like we were making progress in the right direction. But I don't know. It's really really hard to tell. But it was definitely a thing of like each group, because we were a split party for most of the session. Um, so it was all right. Well, you guys defeated or met with this. Roll your dice to see what happens next. And like we round a corner, and like we're at, at this point in time, it's a 15 and a 16-year-old. We don't have, we don't even have our backpacks or bikes with us. Like we're just broke out of, essentially our captor's cell. Uh, and
Juvie. You
like
just
we
broke out of
see,
juvie.
we essentially, I don't have shoes or a shirt even. I'm like, I am just in a pair of like white, like scrub pants is like
Hmm.
all I've got. And like we turn the corner and there's like four tacked out like soldiers like with the rifle and the vest, and I'm like, well, this is not gonna be good. Like I thought we were dead right there. It's like but we clearly survived.
Apparently. So,
Live to fight another day.
what do you think? Like the traditional big bad for a labyrinth or a maze is the Minotaur. What would you replace the Minotaur with?
So like there's a couple different directions depending upon what you want to feel is the theme of the maze. So I've got numerous ideas, revolving in my head based off of uh some of the things in our world and some of the other um things based on what we've talked about. So I like the idea of like a maze being like an undead themed. So I feel like some ancient spirit that is like caused the maze to, come into an existence, and he never gets to truly, you know, be defeated or dismissed. Like, even if you defeat his hit points, whether it be a revenant aspect or something along those lines, he's just gonna repopulate unless you can somehow wish the maze away or some nonsense like that. Uh, so like that's one direction, and that's something I'm percolating in the back of the brain. A uh, a feelingless construct, I feel, could be a good thing because that's something that could tirelessly pursue them. So if you've got a concept of like you've got to get to the center of the maze before the construct catches up to you, I think that could be a cool thing. And it definitely has the feel of the Minotaur that's pursuing. But because it's a construct, it's tireless, it's not going to give up. It doesn't need to sleep. It's just going to be merciless in its pursuit. So that could fill that criteria. But then I started going in another direction of like, leaning towards Vandus, who is our, goddess that's about like skill at arms and, um, you know, physical skill, any athletics and acrobatics, any kind of like Olympic competition, as well as actual skill at combat is all things that Vandus cares about. But Vandus is typically like a goodly god. So I'm trying to think of like, all right, if I were to do something related to Vandus, and Vandus is high in my thought pattern because in my kids' game, one of the kids is actually a worshiper of Vandus. So like anytime I can be like, hey, can I do anything with Vandus here? I wanna put that in just to kind of more lore drop for that player. Um, so I'm trying to think of like what kind of things would Vandus want in her maze? What would make that, excel? Because it's not about death, it's about survival and excellence. So that's kind of like it's a half-formed thought, but I got three different things all gelling at the same time. So
So what about like a gauntlet,
okay.
right? You know, what if you went that approach also? Gauntlet was a game where you're just going through a labyrinth. But that's not exactly what I'm thinking. Generally a gauntlet is just is tends to be smaller in scope, right? We've definitely seen different medieval movies with that kind of challenge. But what if a god decided to make this expansive gauntlet to be run by the most skilled of warriors? And so it could be a combination of mechanical and magical contraptions just meant to test one's mental fortitude, their resolve, their endurance, their athleticism. It could be all kinds of things like the shifting pillars that you have to run across, the corridors with blades that you have to dodge and not try not to get skewered. Um, you could do something uh, like an archery thing where they have to hit the targets in order to stave
Hmm.
off the bad thing every round, or there's a consequence.
Yeah, I definitely dig that. And
Maybe a different
no,
twist on the labyrinth.
sure. Uh, I'm gonna have to like, kind of go back and rewatch this one and take some notes because I think I'm off of DMing for the kids game for the summer. I kind of mentioned something about it last week, and we got a sequel game coming up this Friday. Uh, uh, but it's not my game. It's the alternate candy game. But my game was designed for my son wanted uh, the sword of Vandus. And I'm like, all right, well, that's certainly a thing that I can kind of work with. But I always love the buildup of like, all right, well, I don't want you to just go find the thing and it's, all said and done. I want there to be more to the story, more to the adventure. So, like, we had kind of workshopped some thoughts, and there is a dragon lairing near where they're at now that is in their sights, like they're looking to go fight it eventually. And in that lair is going to be the hilt, but the blade has been removed, been destroyed. Nobody knows. So he's going to have to quest to get the sword fixed, reforged, what have you.
It becomes a
Uh,
lightsaber.
no, I'm definitely not going the lightsaber direction for this one. I've definitely seen that been done a number of times. You've actually given my character, the double lightsaber way back when, um, back when Darth Maul was all the craze. But I feel like getting to the center of Avandis Labyrinth, the Gauntlet, uh, I think that would be a very fitting solve for this. I think that's a direction I'm gonna have to work in. That's awesome, Dave.
So what you could do too, right? If you want to have a part two, right? Or or you could run it straight up, but you could have it get cursed or infect it with chaos magic, or or some other, or someone else is able to do something to change it. uh and so if you were to use it like as is earlier in a campaign and then bring it back as a adventure location again, but this time where the stakes are upped quite a bit because there's a malevolent presence that's kind of guiding everything
Mm,
now, as
yeah,
opposed to just being there to test the skills of champions. Instead, it's there to grind them to dust.
yeah, that could be a lot of fun. And I have the feeling that Zargon has been in one of your games before. He brings up a spike pit full of flying snakes.
Or he owns an adventure we've written. All our possibilities. Listen, don't sleep on the flying snake in 5e. It's definitely an underrated monster. It's also funny that it's just considered a beast. Like D&D is very
Yeah,
arbitrary in what they consider monstrosity beasts and other things.
flying snake, it's a beast. Owlbear, absolutely a monstrosity.
Yes. But don't sleep on it. Also, one of the best animal companions for a Beastmaster Ranger, if you're not using like the revised rules, especially at low levels, the thing hits hard, unless they're immune to poison. Then
Unless they're immune to poison.
not nearly as effective.
Yeah,
So,
I've also seen you know, if we're talking about hard hitting monsters, this is definitely slightly off the track, but you could put these things in your maze. Animated armor. I've definitely put some hurt in on players who just can't hit that 20 AC. And assassin vines. I have found out in the recent months that that is another one that can punch above its CR3.
don't forget the shadows, man. How about this? Put a shadow in a suit of animated armor. Just pops out, swipes at them, goes back into the armor. Can't actually get at the shadow until you defeat the
That's
armor.
that's pretty savage, man. I don't know if I'm that mean to do that.
It depends where you put it and how you use it. All things have their place.
We got Sean weighing in from Omaha, Nebraska.
I would definitely use that in one of my games. Besides, like
I
you're able to use it against a much higher level party than it would normally
hmm.
be intended for, right? Like I'm not saying use that combination against your first level party. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, that's a way to, end a campaign real quick. All right, first encounter, you see a dude in a suit of armor. And next thing you know, why are there three shadows around here? Where did the wizard and the cleric go?
Well, I mean, what level was the party you almost killed with the animated armor?
I had two animated armors. I think it was two, and it was a fifth level party, and they it was the first encounter. They honestly were like, I have to save all of my spells for the second or third encounter, and they just could not hit that 20, no matter what they did. It was
Mm.
bad. Um, then I had like a single assassin vine against a fifth level party, uh, and I nearly killed two of them. I'm like, geez, what are you guys doing here?
Sure, blame the party.
Oh, I mean, the
Well, you know,
monster's just doing what the monster does.
sometimes the dice are with you, and sometimes they're not.
That is true. So Sean wants to know what's the best strategy for dealing with minotaurs and kobolds in a labyrinth or maze.
Be faster than the other members of your party.
Hmm. You don't have to outrun the minotaur; just outrun the rest of your party.
No,
Expeditious
so
retreat, anyone?
the tough thing about the Minotaur and the maze is, especially depending on your DM, your mileage may vary, but like the way I use them in Maze of Mandoon is, before you ever get to the final fight, there's a lot of hit and run tactics. There are several different types of labyrinths. What the labyrinths are constructed of, all of which tend to be hazardous to the players. And a lot of times, I would just have the Minotaur show up, hit the party, do some damage, and then run off, and then go heal up for whatever the party did. So it becomes really just a kind of a battle of attrition, you know, from the DM side. Now, from the player side, is like, how do you deal with that? You know, there's definitely some characters are going to do better than others. Like if you have someone who's immune to being surprised, that can be huge plus because they're not going to they're not going to get the free hits on them. But being able to slow or impede a creature that's making those kind of attacks against you, and I can see kobolds doing the same with the skirmish style fighting. So you need a way to slow them down and keep them from getting away from you. So like things like entangle could be very useful. Web could be very useful. Even grease could be really useful, knocking them prone so they have to spend half their movement to get up. Or maybe something like spike growth where you can really punish them on their way out and make them really pay for attacking you would be another way. And also, I think that creates difficult terrain too, so it also would have the effects of slowing them. You just might not be able to quite follow them effectively, considering it's spike growth.
Right.
So off the top of my head, those are some ideas.
And I would also look at, like coupled with that, depending upon what the hazards and things there are, any kind of like spells or attacks that do pushes or pulls, whether you're pushing them into hazards, pulling them back, back when they're trying to flee, like all of the things that get into the tactics angle of the game are the things that like I would begin looking at from a player perspective. Now, the sad thing is like characters don't always know when they're going to get dropped into a maze. So like you're usually you've got your spells prepared for the day and then the shit hits the fan. So like if you've got the ability to be forewarned that you're going into one of these things, then absolutely pull all of your tactical stuff, forward. Yeah, you're going to need to do some damaging stuff, but you know, skill enhancement or skill empowerment, the things that are going to boost your skills for those that don't have them, pass without a trace if you're going to try and do a stealthy kind of angle of not being observed. Though I think that one's a little bit harder to pull off depending upon what the theme of the maze. Um, but looking at your spell selection to be as tactical as possible, building out characters that whether you go with maneuvers or grapple kind of deals. Like there's definitely ways to uh get more for your attack than just I swing my longsword and do 1d8 plus 3 damage.
I mean, even with just cantrips though, between the warlock, druid, and wizard, you can pull like 30 feet off of a single enemy or spread it out. You've got Thorn Whip. It's a 10 foot pull. Um, there is the
Lightning lore.
invocation. Lightning Lure is another one. There's the invocation you can add to Eldritch Blast that becomes a pull. Like you
Grasp
said.
of Hadar.
Oh, is that the one that pulls?
That's the invocation.
Yeah.
I just recently made a warlock, so I was looking at those.
Yeah, and then Ray of Frost -10 the speed, so you could definitely hinder the movement of enemies that way as well. And they're all just cantrips, and they're fairly common ones. I mean, Thorn Whip is one of my favorites to give to an artificer or a druid. I think early on my artificer used Thorn Whip pretty often, and
Hmm.
also like it's perfect for pulling the enemies closer to the barbarian. Plus that sick range of 30 feet is pretty nice as well.
Yes, pull it in and
And
get them there so that
thematically,
you can.
thematically is pretty cool. Although at the end of the day, you do end up with a problem of you are a druid pulling things closer to you. you just need
Yeah, I
you just need the meat shields between you and it.
So as we're getting into our last couple of minutes, I will throw out the reminder. Because of traveling to Gen Con this week, there will not be a Vastgrim this week. But if you are itching for some, Nerdarchy gaming experience, you can come on back Friday night and see yours truly in the player seat this time, as we've got episode 3 of Old Guard with Robin at the helm. So very much looking forward to getting back into those amazing characters. You can pay attention to social media for where some of our people might happen to be. I know Brian's already sent stuff my way. I'm gonna nudge Dave to send me some information as to what panels and places he might be at if you happen to be out at Gen Con, where I might be able to send you off to go find a Nerdarchist Dave, whether you're looking for an autograph, a handshake, or a say hi, or what have you.
Yeah, never. You have to find me and track me down and hunt me like a ranger, hunting their favorite
Well,
prey.
I mean that could be possible as well. But if you're going to Gen Con, be on the lookout for Dave. I imagine he's probably going to be wearing his usual button down stuff. Um, look for the gray beard.
Yeah, look for Nerdy Santa Claus, and I will be there. Also, we won't be doing this next week because I'll still be at Gen Con and maybe drunk by this time. Who knows? Um, I
Going
don't
to
know.
take you all week to get drunk.
Well, I got to build up to it. Start Wednesday night, and by Sunday night, and then I need to recover enough to drive home Monday. So
Indeed. So yeah, we won't be here next Sunday. But you can use that time to catch up on all the thousands of videos of content that we have here on the channel. So yeah,
with that, it's about that time. So I think on that note, we should wrap things up. And until next time, stay nerdy.
stay nerdy.